if I told you that this boy, only 11 years old, became a Formula One star?
We won it!
But achieving this was not easy. He almost had to give up his dream due to a lack of money, and a personal tragedy put his entire career at risk. This is the incredible story of Charles Leclerc, a boy who never gave up. Charles-Marc Percival Leclerc was born on the 16th of October 1997 in Monte Carlo, Monaco. But for Charles, this was not just the place where he was born, it was the place where he dreamed of winning. The son of former driver Hervé Leclerc, Charles grew up surrounded by the roar of engines and a passion for motorsport. Hervé competed during the 1980s and 1990s, and in his time he had enormous potential, even making it to Formula 3. And all his passion for racing was passed on to Charles, who began dreaming of becoming a driver just like his father. But motorsport can be quite cruel at times. The thing is, due to a lack of money, Hervé never had the chance to show the world everything he was capable of, and his dream of reaching Formula One ended before it could become a reality. So when he saw that Charles also wanted to be a driver, Hervé made a promise to himself. No matter what happened, he would never let his son's dream suffer the same fate as his own. And that's when he started training young Charles, teaching him everything he knew and giving him all the support he needs. To give you an idea, Charles was barely 4 years old and was already driving his first kart. But don't be mistaken, despite being very young, he wasn't doing it just for fun. By the age of 7, he was already competing, and by 8, he was dominating all the local championships. Meanwhile, Hervé did everything he could to keep his promise, but unfortunately his son's career started facing the same problems as his own. He managed to hold on until Charles turned 12, but as you know, the world of racing is incredibly expensive. Even in karting, competitions require top-level equipment, specialized mechanics, and constant travel. So even after spending every last penny of the family's savings, at some point Charles would have to give up on his dream. That's when Jules Bianchi stepped in. Jules was a driver for the Ferrari Driver Academy and was on his way to entering Formula One. But to the Leclerc family, he was much more than that. He was a great friend, a mentor, and almost an older brother to Charles. So much so that when he found out about the struggles Charles was facing, he did everything he could to help him. And I'm not just talking about financial help. He introduced Charles to his manager, Nicholas Todt, which helped him sign with All Road Management and secured all the support he needed. Thanks to this, Charles' dream was able to stay alive, and from that moment on, he never stopped. Between 2005 and 2013, he won multiple karting titles, including the runner-up position in the French KF3 category and victory in the Monaco Kart Cup. In 2013, he competed in the Karting World Championship, almost at the same time that his friend Jules was making his debut in Formula One. Little by little, they were achieving everything they had always dreamed of, and now they hope to one day race together for Ferrari. But that wouldn't be easy at all. So much so that Charles ended up losing the Karting World Championship, all because of a certain Max Verstappen who took first place. And that wasn't the only time the driver gave Leclerc a headache.
Max, what happened? No, it's just unfair. I'm leading, he wants to pass, he pushed me, I push him back, and after he pushed me off the track. It's not fair, eh?
Charles, what's happened with Max?
Nothing, just an incident on the race.
That's right, even at that age, they were already rivals, and that rivalry continues to this day, with them fighting for the podium every year. Another name that crossed Charles' path during this time was Antoine Hubert. They grew up competing together, sharing victories, defeats, and the dream of one day reaching Formula One. But at that moment, the goal was different: single-seaters. And in 2014, Charles finally made it. He made the transition to Formula Renault 2.0, where once again his talent stood out. His rise was meteoric, and it was impossible not to notice that Charles was different from the other drivers. This led him to moving up to the European Formula 3 in 2015, and man, this was his golden opportunity. Your dream has always been to race in Formula 1, so if you did well, there would only be a few steps left for it to come true. But while your career was taking an impressive turn, your personal life suffered a devastating blow. On a rainy day during the 2014 Japanese Grand Prix, Jules, your mentor, lost control due to the wet track.
Oh my God!
The impact was brutal and left him in hospital for months fighting for his life, until on the 17th of July 2015, Jules Bianchi, the man who was practically a brother to Charles, passed away. There are no words to describe how devastated Charles was. Jules wasn't just his mentor, he was the driver Charles looked up to, his best friend, and now their dream of racing together for Ferrari and winning the World Championship was shattered. This could easily have been the end for Leclerc, and surely everyone would have understood if he had given up. But Charles decided that, from that moment on, he would race not just for himself, but also for Jules, and he would not rest until their dreams were fulfilled. And mate, he did all that and so much more. From that moment on, his mission was clear: reach Formula 1, and the next step came quickly. The very next year, Charles moved up to the GP3 series, competing for ART Grand Prix, and from the very start he proved that he was a driver above the rest. He dominated the season, secured impressive victories, and clinched the title with a round to spare. But the next step would be the hardest of all: Formula 2, the place where great talents prove themselves and where only the best reach the top. Charles knew that season would be all or nothing. If he dominated, Formula 1 would be inevitable. But if he failed, all his father's and Jules' hard work would have been in vain, as his dream would come to an end. That's why he gave it his all and started the year already showing that he was more than ready for Formula 1. Right in the first race in Bahrain, Charles did the unbelievable. He had a strong start, took the lead on lap 9 and dominated the entire race, until, due to a mistake by the team who called him into the pits too early, he ended up dropping to 14th place. For any other driver, that would have been the end, but not for Charles. For him, this was just the beginning. Charles got back on the track and began an incredible recovery, overtaking car after car, chasing every millisecond as if his life depended on it. And in the end,
He might have opened the door. Luca Ghiotto's opened the door, and Charles Leclerc takes the lead. He's passed absolutely everyone to get himself back to the front.
Wow. Yes! Yes! Oh, thank you for the great job. Oh, yes!
that victory was simply incredible. But not only that, it also showed that Leclerc was on a much higher level than his rivals. After that, he dominated the season and was unstoppable, until his life took another heavy blow. In the middle of the 2017 season, before he had even fully recovered from his last loss, his father, Hervé Leclerc, passed away at the age of 54. This left Charles devastated. Now the man who had always been by his side, who sacrificed everything he had so that Charles could have a chance in Formula 1, was gone. The pain Charles felt at that moment was so unbearable that it drained all his strength and made him consider giving up. After all, how could he keep racing as if nothing had happened? But then he remembered, if he stopped there, everything his father had done for him would have been in vain. Hervé didn't fight all those years just to see him give up. He fought because he believed Charles was special. So, even with his heart broken, Charles made a decision.
As soon as he passed away, I asked myself, what would he want me to do? And I had no doubts. I mean, there was only one answer. He was living for racing. He loved so much racing and he loved seeing me racing.
Now it was time to get back on the track and win. His next race took place in Baku, just 4 days after losing his father. And amidst all the pain and suffering, Leclerc found the strength to deliver one of the most emotional races of his life. From the start, he simply dominated the race, and when he crossed the finish line, he dedicated the victory to his father.
Father, he did many things in my career. I mean, if I'm here today, it's thanks to him. He made me start at 3 years old, and since then he has been a huge support for me. And yeah, it's a good way to thank him. It won't bring him back, but satisfying thing for me this week.
After that day, it was clear to everyone that Charles Leclerc was no longer the same. He was no longer just another talent, he was a fighter, and he kept fighting, win after win, pole after pole, destroying his competition in Formula 2 and clinching the title with unbelievable dominance. After all of this, Formula 1 could no longer ignore him, and at the end of 2017, it finally happened. Sauber announced that Charles Leclerc would be a full-time driver for the 2018 season. At the age of 20, Charles finally achieved his dream of entering Formula 1. Now the challenge was different. Getting in was a huge step, but to stay there, he would have to prove his worth against the best drivers in the world. And as you can probably imagine, the first races were extremely difficult. To start with, the Sauber car was weak and unable to compete for the title, and on top of that, Charles still had to adapt to the new category. These were tough times, until the Azerbaijan Grand Prix came, and wow, that race was chaotic. There were several accidents.
And Ocon and head-to-head collision. Ocon is out of the...
Numerous retirements.
So there is that double puncture for Fernando Alonso. That is going to be some repair job.
And even more experienced drivers were losing their cool that day. But that's when Charles stood out. He kept his calm, seized every opportunity he had, and against all expectations, secured a 6th place finish for Sauber. And it didn't stop there. Throughout the season, he kept impressing. Charles regularly outperformed Marcus Ericsson, his teammate, and got more out of the car than anyone thought possible. And of course, all this talent didn't go unnoticed. Meanwhile, all of this was happening, Ferrari was watching closely. They knew they needed a new star, and Charles seemed to be exactly that. Then at the end of 2018 came the announcement Charles Leclerc was the newest driver for Ferrari. That day was certainly one of the happiest in Charles' life. Not only did he fulfill one of his biggest wishes, but also Jules, with whom he had always shared this dream. But he hardly had time to feel all that emotion, because the 2019 season was already starting, with an enormous tension in the air. As you already know, Charles didn't join Ferrari just to learn. He was replacing Kimi Räikkönen, a world champion, and sharing the garage with Sebastian Vettel, a 4-time champion and team leader for the past 4 years. And that's when things started to get interesting. Ferrari made it clear from the start that, for them, Vettel was the man who would bring the World Championship title back home. That's why he was the team's #1 driver. But I think they forgot to tell Charles that, because he simply embarrassed the veteran. In only his 2nd race in Bahrain, he shocked everyone, claiming his first pole position with an incredible lap and leaving Vettel in the dust. And on Sunday, he completely dominated the race. Charles was just a few minutes away from securing his first Formula 1 victory, until...
There's something strange with the engine.
Okay, copy that. We are checking it.
There's something strange with the engine.
Oh no, I hope not.
What's happening?
In the most crucial moment, the car had engine problems that caused him to lose the lead to Hamilton and Bottas.
Charles Leclerc gets his first podium in Formula 1.
Well guys, that was extremely unfortunate for Charles. He drove such a great race. We've got work to do to try and keep these guys.
In the end, Charles had to settle for 3rd place, but he knew that victory should have been his.
This guy here, he's got lots more wins coming in the future, so congratulations to him.
Fortunately, the opportunity for redemption came much sooner than he expected at the legendary Spa-Francorchamps circuit. But that weekend would not just be another race for Charles. On Saturday, during a Formula 2 race, the motorsport world witnessed a tragedy unfold. Antoine Hubert, one of Charles' closest friends and his rival during their karting days, suffered a brutal accident.
Car has lost it on the way in. Oh no. Oh, that's a horrible accident.
The doctors did everything they could, but he didn't make it. This left Charles devastated. Once again, he had lost someone who was part of his story, and his grief was indescribable. But by now, you must know Charles Leclerc well enough to understand that he didn't give up. On Sunday, he got in the car and gave it his all. From his start to his overtakes, he gave his best to make everything perfect, and the result came shortly after.
Flag, and for the first time ever, Charles Leclerc wins a Formula 1 Grand Prix. Charles Leclerc wins the Belgian Grand Prix.
Finally, Charles won his first race in Formula 1, and of course, he couldn't hold back the tears.
The one we've lost and the one that we found. To win a Formula 1 World Championship Grand Prix, he did it for his friend. He achieved it for himself.
This was definitely one of the most emotional moments of the season, but Charles didn't even have time to process all of this, because just 1 week later came Monza, and what happened in that race was insane. Remember that Ferrari believed Charles would be their new star. Well, if there was ever a time for him to prove that Ferrari was right, it was now. Monza is the temple of Ferrari, a circuit where the Italians have been waiting for nearly a decade for a victory, and Leclerc did not disappoint. From the start of the race, he was amazing, fending off Lewis Hamilton's attacks with perfect driving. No matter how much pressure Hamilton put on him, Charles didn't give in a single time. And in the end,
Charles Leclerc has coped brilliantly. He won in Spa. He wins in Monza. Charles Leclerc is the winner of the 2019 Italian Grand Prix.
You've done it.
This is by far one of the most incredible races of Leclerc's career. The Italians were so happy with the victory, they gave him a nickname, Charles Leclerc, the predestined. But not everything was joy. While Charles' career was soaring, his relationship with Vettel was crumbling. The four-time champion didn't handle being outperformed by a 21-year-old very well, and with each race, the tension between the two only grew. Then came the Brazilian Grand Prix, where the rivalry between the two reached its breaking point. At one point, Leclerc and Vettel were battling for position when Vettel attempted a very aggressive overtaking move. Vettel must have thought that Leclerc would yield, but that's not what happened, and in the end, both had to retire from the race. And to make the atmosphere even more tense, Leclerc finished the year ahead of Vettel in the championship, proving that Ferrari had made the right choice. But of all, Vettel was the only one dissatisfied. After Leclerc's incredible campaign, both the Italians and Ferrari were putting all their faith in him, and when 2020 arrived, everyone was thinking of just one thing: fighting for the title. But what no one knew was that this would be impossible. It turns out that, in secret, the FIA was investigating Ferrari's engine. Some say they did this because the team was pushing the limits of the regulations. But the one thing we know for sure is that a secret arrangement was made, and Ferrari was forced to modify their engine. It was only when the season started that Leclerc's fans fully understood what this meant. The SF1000, which was supposed to be the car that would take Leclerc into the championship battle, turned into one of Ferrari's worst cars in recent decades. And to make matters worse, the relationship between Leclerc and Vettel, which was already in ruins, reached its breaking point. In May 2020, Ferrari announced that they would not be renewing Sebastian's contract, and that would be his last year with the team. Now, the team belonged to Charles. But unfortunately, given the state of Ferrari's car, it didn't mean much. The season started with a miracle in Austria, where Leclerc managed to secure a hard-earned second place after Hamilton was penalised and lost the position. But by the following week, everything collapsed again. In the Styrian Grand Prix, Leclerc tried an aggressive overtaking move on the first lap and ended up hitting Vettel, which caused both of them to retire from the race. By this point, Charles was putting so much pressure on himself that he ended up making a big mistake. The entire responsibility of being Ferrari's #1 and leading the team to a championship victory was becoming a huge burden on his shoulders. And the saddest part is that he had more than enough talent to win, but with that car, it was impossible. Unfortunately, throughout the year, the situation only worsened, and Ferrari couldn't even fight for podiums. At times, Leclerc pushed the car beyond its limits, but the reality was disappointing. Ferrari was only the 6th best on the grid. Then came the end of the year. Vettel said his goodbye to the team, and now Charles was the only man at Ferrari. But was he ready to carry this weight? Well, in any case, the 2021 season started giving signs that Ferrari was recovering. It was no longer as weak as the previous year, but it was still not time to start dreaming again, as it wasn't ready to fight for victories yet. Clearly, this was a rebuilding phase for the team, and this reconstruction came with a new teammate, Carlos Sainz. At that moment, many thought Sainz would only be a wingman, a second driver to support Leclerc, but that's not exactly what happened. Carlos was consistent from the start, while Leclerc seemed to experience a rollercoaster of highs and lows. And then came Monaco. We have already talked about Leclerc's dream of becoming a Formula 1 driver, joining Ferrari and becoming world champion. But like all drivers, he still had one more dream: to win in his homeland. Until that moment, he had never won at home, and even with everything against him, he of course gave his best to win. On Saturday, he made an incredible lap in Q3. Unfortunately, he ended up crashing at the end of the session, but no worries, the important thing is that before that, he secured pole position. And then on Sunday, with tension at its peak, the unbelievable happened. When Leclerc left the pits to line up on the grid, his car simply broke down and he couldn't even start the race. This became known as the Monaco curse. After that, the season continued and Charles had some great moments, like an impressive pole position in Azerbaijan. But unlike him, Sainz was much more consistent, and by the end of the year, it hit home. Sainz finished the championship ahead of Leclerc. As difficult as it was to handle the pressure of being #1, this ended up being an even harsher blow. This even made Ferrari start questioning Charles' leadership within the team. Then came 2022, and once again, Ferrari was full of promises. With the new Formula 1 regulations bringing completely different cars, this was the team's chance to return to the top. They were developing the F175, and during the pre-season tests, it became clear that it was incredibly fast. But was it fast enough? The answer came at the Bahrain Grand Prix. On Saturday, Leclerc secured pole position, defeating Max Verstappen and Red Bull. On Sunday, the race was a direct battle between the two, with Leclerc and Verstappen battling for several laps, swapping overtakes as if they were already fighting for the title. But Charles kept his calm, defending his position, and when Verstappen suffered an engine issue, his victory was secured. record. After that, Charles Leclerc was the leader of the World Championship, and now everyone could start dreaming of the title again. And to make things even better, 2 races later in Australia, he won in dominant fashion, extending his lead in the championship. But unfortunately, Ferrari was still Ferrari, and it didn't take long for the mistakes to start showing up again. In Barcelona, while leading, the engine failed.
No, what happened? What happened? Lost power.
A loss of power, a race that was going absolutely splendidly for him, and he is out of the race.
In Monaco, the curse struck again. He was leading the race when Ferrari made a strategic mistake, calling him into the pits at the wrong time.
And box now, box now, box for hard. Stay out, stay out, stay out.
Why?
Multifunction tire, position 5. Multifunction tire, position 5.
The frustration didn't end there. In the Silverstone Grand Prix, he was leading the race and victory seemed guaranteed, but in the final moments, instead of putting fresh tyres on his car, Ferrari decided to put them on Sainz's car. And when the race restarted, Leclerc was quickly overtaken. Sainz ended up winning and Charles finished in 4th place. Ferrari was making mistake after mistake, and this was costing Leclerc the title. But nothing was worse than the French Grand Prix. Charles was leading the way when suddenly
he's been suffering with rear degradation. It's gone in hard. I'm surprised he wasn't able to reverse out at.
At that moment, everything was over. Verstappen won the race and opened a lead in the championship that would never be recovered. Meanwhile, Ferrari continued to suffer from more mechanical issues and strategic failures. And by the end of the year, the title that had seemed possible at the start of the season slipped away, with Leclerc unable to do anything about it. The most the Ferrari managed to give him was a 2nd place in the World Championship. In 2023, the season brought new hopes for the team, but also new disappointments. The car, which was supposed to be an evolution of the previous one, actually regressed. On the other hand, the Red Bull car reached a much higher level, allowing Max Verstappen to win race after race effortlessly, until Las Vegas came along. On that day, Leclerc managed to start from pole position and had an incredible battle with Verstappen and Perez. And even without having the best car, he fought until the last lap and made a spectacular overtaking move on Perez in the final meters to secure 2nd place. He may not have won, but it was a reminder that, despite everything, his talent was still there. It was just up to Ferrari to do its part, and Leclerc could have won the championship, but unfortunately, this was yet another wasted year. In 2024, Ferrari promised that everything would be different and that this time they would do everything right. The season started well with 4 podiums in the first 7 races, and Leclerc always finishing in the top 4. But Charles still had an issue to resolve: Monaco. He didn't give up on his dream of winning at home, and this time he was ready to triumph on the circuit that had always punished him. That weekend, he did everything right, securing pole position without any accidents and making a perfect start on Sunday. Leclerc controlled the race like a master, and with every lap, every corner, his dream got closer to becoming a reality. Until finally,
Charles Leclerc wins the Monaco Grand Prix!
Yes! 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 Yes!
Charles Leclerc won the Monaco Grand Prix. This moment was so emotional that it spread throughout the paddock, with everyone crying tears of joy, celebrating his victory alongside him. After that, the season continued with more podiums and more wins, but unfortunately, the title still didn't come. But now, the question remains, will Charles Leclerc ever be a world champion? Only time will tell the answer, but one thing I know for sure is that no matter what happens, he will never give up.